Yeah, so nice to be here again as one of the sponsors of this conference. As maybe a lot of people of you know, so we're also a member of the Digital Euro Association and have also been one of the initiators for this type of conference here in Frankfurt, which I think is super important, and I think all the feedback I get from all of you is very positive. So I think congratulations to the Digital Euro Association for organizing this conference. So, yes, thanks, Manfred. Okay, so let's let's move on the panel discussions, and so we changed the title slightly, so everyone who's following, because the idea is really, in the morning we heard a lot about retail CBDC, the concept, the use cases, discussions around this. But I think in Europe, as you all know, I mean, the ECB has finalized the exploration phase. So we have seen a lot of reports coming out on the design principles of the retail CBDC or the digital euro. So we know that a lot of other central banks are already live. So therefore, the idea is really to discuss with my panelists a little bit more about what is the implication actually for implementing a CBDC. And also what's the future of CBDC from various perspectives. So therefore we have technology providers on the table, we have service providers on the table, and we have banks on the table, on the panel. So therefore I'm really looking forward to this discussion, and maybe let's start with an introduction around. So James, do you want to start?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm James Wallace from Ripple. I lead the work we do with central banks around digital currencies. It's great to be here.
So, my name is Patricia Battenberg. I'm from Worldline, working there for financial services and, amongst other things, heading the strategic relationships initiatives, and also very happy to have something to say in the digital euro aspect.
I'm Manfred Richels from UniCredit, managing on one hand the transformation project in payments. On the other side, I'm heavily involved in the digital euro because I'm member of the rulebook development group. I'm also member of the ERPB technical sessions with the ECB, so directly trying to design the the digital euro together with the ECB.
And I'm Jerome Eidenbaum with IDEMIA, based in Paris. And guess what? I'm in charge of the digital currency business.
Perfect. Thanks very much. So, yeah, maybe let's start with a very broad question. So, I mean, what do you really think are the challenges when implementing a retail CBDC for different players in the market? I mean, for the whole payment ecosystem. So maybe, Manfred, you want to start from a bank perspective?
Oh, a short question and long answer, I can tell you, because it's not so easy. I will try to create some dimensions on that one. On one hand, it's a technological challenge. Yeah, so the ECB is trying to create something which is based on the latest technology available, whatever it means, we don't know, and this also will have an impact on our side, which means we have to integrate a complete new technology, a complete new payment rail, which we don't know yet. But for sure, it will be a huge project for each and every bank to get this somehow up and running. I mean, if and we've seen this with the tenders, if the central bank is now asking for tenders of 1.2 billion euro, and this is only parts of the party. Yeah, we know that main topics are still missing and have not been tendered. Then the ECB is taking a tremendous investment. And nobody should think that this integration to banks will then be done with some euro cent. So it will be really a huge work to get this up and running, which also means that in the meanwhile, and we are talking about years, banks are prevented from creating innovation. They have to integrate first all these new payment functionalities. Second dimension is business model. Yeah, so banks have to rethink their business model. The digital euro will be, that's at least coming out from the design of the ECB, will be in direct competition to what banks are offering today. I mean, banks are offering payment products. Yeah? Maybe not everyone is aware of, but banks are offering payment products. And usually, at least for me, I never had a problem to find a way to pay in a shop, except when I was out of money. But it is really something on which the ECB is now creating a solution for which solutions are existing on the market, which also means there will be a direct competition to those solutions. And not to forget, we're talking about something which is publicly financed and now goes into competition for private finance initiatives. So banks have to deal with it and rethink their business model. Third dimension is liquidity. Yeah, what we are seeing now is a tremendous change, which will already start on the instant payment regulation and will continue with the digital euro, that people will more and more be able to pay instantly. An instant payment is something which we do not know as something for our liquidity management, which we do not know as an instrument. Yeah? So currently the instant payment volumes are so low that it's completely negligible. But in future, if this will become the mainstream payment system, we have to rethink all our liquidity KPIs and also the liquidity models. And last dimension is risk. With the digital euro, we are facing new types of risks. Yeah, that's for sure, not only based on the infrastructure and the technology, but also fraud. Yeah, not to forget. We are creating a complete new payment ecosystem, and this will be the victim, because it's the central ecosystem for as digital euro in Europe. Then it will be the victim of every fraudster worldwide. And for sure, some will find a way to create fraud. Some will find a way. So we need to deal with it, and we have to manage a complete new centralized infrastructure in Europe, and that's the challenge.
No, thanks very much, and I think we will go through the dimensions you're mentioning. So I think that gives us a good guidance also for the discussion. So, but maybe from Patricia, from your perspective, I mean, what do your clients think about the digital euro implementation? And I think you also have your own product. So, what is your thinking around this, on the challenges?
Well, I think important to start off with is that, I'm not sure that everyone is aware, but we as Worldline, we have several hats on. We're composed of 3 global business lines. One is merchant services, pretty much self-explanatory. Then we have financial services, and then we have the mobility and e-transactional services, which, however, do not count in this discussion here. Now, I think from a financial services perspective, from which we were also very long engaged in, I would say, the making of the digital euro back from 2020, we can fully comprehend and underline what Manfred has just been saying. We're very well aware, working for and with financial institutions, that this does compose a great amount of complexity, because, I mean, since it involves payer and payee, there are 2 streams. For one, you have to adapt the existing banking services to this new ecosystem. So here, I mean, I think that is actually the part which currently is a bit underestimated or undervalued by somebody who's not coming from the banking, direct banking environment. So if you think about, you know, everything, anything, you know, the funding, defunding, KYC, so there has to be the mechanism put in place to adapt. On the other hand, you have completely new services or functionalities, better to say, such as the offline, which needs to be built from scratch, right? And this is, of course, where we're also active and very engaged. But I would say from a financial services perspective, we do also see, because we have somewhat the same issue, that this currently is a huge investment. It is what I would describe also something like a moving target, yes? And I think this is a concept which everybody needs to embrace, that this is not a project with a dedicated closed business case, which is mapped out, and then there's an end date, and then you cut and you say, great, this is what we invested, this is the money we made. And, you know, this is the effort we had, and we had, I don't know, 2,000 FTEs on that, etc. This is a project with a very long longevity where the use cases will pay off. This is what we truly believe. Otherwise, I mean, we would not be as engaged as we are. But of course, it is an invest in the first place. As introduction of SEPA and PSD 1, 2, 3R, I mean, everything that includes rules, regulations, does include also costs in the first step. So this is what we're well aware of. Of course, in terms then of merchant services, the aspect, I think what's also important to say here is that the definition of the payment service provider under the light of the digital euro environment has a slightly different significance than under, you know, classical definition, right? Since on one hand, I mean, we service what we're acquirer, and that is highly cherished also by the merchants. But on the other hand, now, of course, we have, I would say, additional functions, roles, interactions, so that also this dialogue with the merchants who currently have a large burden on their shoulder, let's not forget that, who are interested and very eager and engaged, but who have a burden. Also that expectation from our collaboration model with them needs to be met and managed.
No, thanks very much. So my takeaway is it's new technology, so that's a challenge. So it's a moving target. It will take a long time, so it will not end in 2028. And it will cost a lot of money. So that's at least some of the takeaways I have here from you. So thanks very much. So I think you touched already on the offline piece. So therefore, I think it's a good handover to the next topic on the form factors, as ECB call it. So basically, there's is an idea how the digital euro will be presented to the public in the future. So maybe, Jerome, do you want to give us a little bit of a background, which type of form factors are ECB is thinking of, and maybe your thoughts around offline payment, which I think everyone is a little bit puzzled.
Yeah, form factors are obviously important. It's what people will see of the digital euro. Infrastructure is behind. So in terms of form factors, it's really putting the user at the center of a process. And the question is, how will we pay in digital euro? And to start with, how do we pay today? And maybe we can ask to the audience, how do you pay today? Who is paying by, let's say, start by phone. Who is paying by phone today? Okay. Quite a lot of people, but not everyone. Who is paying by card? Many people. Wearable watches, anyone? Yeah, a few ones. So from there, even I tell you, hey guys, tomorrow you will start paying the way I tell you to pay. That's one option. And the other option is to, again, put the users at the center of the process and tell them, okay, you will continue to pay with your favorite device. You want to pay CBDC, I won't say too much digital euro, I don't want to talk on behalf of the ECB. You want to pay with your watch, you want to pay with your phone, you want to pay, even kids, how are kids going to pay? And I have a nice story very quickly. We have a customer today for credit and debit cards, not for digital euro, of course, who issue for kids some tiny wallets in the shape of a unicorn, a panda, whatever, you know, for their small purchases. I love the idea. Tomorrow, your kid, instead of giving him a euro banknote, he will have his little koala to pay and buy his candies. I like the idea. So It needs to be easy. It needs to be the device of your choice. In terms of protocols, so here the ECB says QR code or NFC. NFC, of course, is easy, super convenient. There are some constraints, but I believe if we can do NFC, we will do NFC. They also talk about inserting a card. So here it's quite open. The important part is security, because all this convenience, of course, is always a compromise. Convenience, but you need security. And you were talking about security. It will get attacked for sure, especially offline payments. So when you don't have a connection, because when you can call this data center, usually you're covered. When you're on your behalf, I send you €5 and there is no connection. This is offline payment. You need to really be sure of what you are doing, of the security, especially if you want to do digital cash, you want to authorize offline retransfer. I transfer to you, you transfer. So there needs to be a high level of security. So what we are working on today, what we are piloting today is really what I mentioned, this diversity of form factor, this great convenience with no compromise on security. And obviously the security needs to be at the state of the art.
No, thanks. It's a good variety, or it's good how you explained it. But I still think we don't have QR codes in Europe today, so or not everywhere.
No, that's not true. Belgium, for example, is a QR code-based country. Yeah,
in different, but not in the not everywhere. Let's say that way. And I think what's also interesting for me is that this inclusion discussion, isn't it? So because the cash is for every age, for everyone, and everyone can use it. So therefore, I mean, it must be, in a way, be presented to the public that also my grandma can use it, but also the kids, so that the kids are encouraged to use it. So therefore, I'm really looking forward what ECB comes up in these form factors and ways how they make it available for all participants or all citizens in Europe. So, but maybe, so this is basically the form factor. So to come to the, let's say, the settlement infrastructure, James, and I know you are involved in multiple CBDC projects. So what is your view on the settlement infrastructure? How could this look like for a CBDC, and maybe also on digital euro, if you have insights?
Yeah, okay. So I think the settlement infrastructure, there seems to be two sort of primary camps, if you like, two thoughts. One is, blockchain or DLT, and the other is more of a traditional centralized system. I think it's clear that, if you just have one use case and you just know that that's the one use case and that's all it's ever going to be, then a centralized system is quite good, right? I mean, it can be well controlled. Where it breaks down is when you want to offer future use cases that you don't know what they are yet, right? So, a traditional system is very hard to rewire or re-engineer. It's also very difficult to have other participants join in with it, right? So I think this is why in most countries, blockchain or DLT is becoming the preferred choice. It allows, cost efficiency. But I think the most important thing is it provides this platform that you can allow other participants to add use cases on. So I think some of us in the industry call it a platform for innovation. The point being, the central bank, I think, will provide the basics, which would be interbank settlement and then a cash alternative, right? My view is if that's all that happens with a CBDC, that's a failure, right? It should be a new innovation, a new platform, a new infrastructure that will allow new use cases, right? So obviously you want to do things faster and cheaper, but this new use case idea, a lot of people are now starting to think about Web3, so internet-based applications, whether it's tokenizing real estate or tokenizing bonds or other different use cases. You need a digital asset as a settlement mechanism, right? And that works very well in a blockchain environment. You can permission people in a very secure way. The other topic that comes up that's relevant to this is interoperability, right? And I think that's worth spending a minute on that. There's lots of different definitions. As a technology company, there's obviously interoperability between different technologies. So let's say the ECB picks one technology and the US picks another and other countries pick another. How are you going to interoperate at a technology level when it comes to cross-border payments, right? That's one dimension. The other one, which I think is probably the most important, is how do you interoperate with the existing payments landscape? So, we have today, through the merchant business, and you have, point-of-sale terminals that accept different devices. How does the CBDC interoperate with that, right? I think that's a big topic as well. And then the third area is around policy. Different countries may have different rules on how much you can hold, right? I don't know, but within the ECB, it's maybe even up to the individual member countries to change some elements of the rule book, maybe, right? So then how do you reconcile that? So it goes back to Manfred's point. There's a lot of different complexities here. Interoperability has to be solved to enable these very fast settlements across these different diverse technologies. Then I think you will see the private sector building new things on top, and that's really where I think the innovation will come.
Now the key question, so do you believe the ECB will build something on blockchain or not?
It's just don't hold me to it, but I think they should.
Manfred has insights.
Okay, he's going to get into
So the technology decision has not been taken. Therefore, that's also what the ECB is stating all the time. So we don't know. Yeah, but I'd like to come back to the, let's say, to the horizon we can open. Yeah, because if we could go for something which is more looking to a public-private partnership model. If we could combine technologies which are available or which can be built for specific purposes by the market and integrate this into something which is working with a digital euro, would be really something which is a leverage for innovation, rather than what the ECB is currently doing with the tender they've published and all the work they're doing, where they're creating a closed shop under their control, providing all the elements which are required for an infrastructure. And as we have heard this morning with the railway from which Peter Bofinger mentioned, or the highway example he made, everything is currently built to be under control of the ECB. And this is not an element which is driving innovation.
Do you want to comment?
Well, yes, maybe just adding to that, I completely understand that, and I think it's a discussed topic. Why are we going this route? Why don't we go the route of having everything open, allowing, like for instance in Britain, access and innovation right from the start. Let's put it like that. I mean, we would have the means, and we would also have input. I mean, I guess it's not going to lack that we would not have the input and nobody would start. But the question that springs to my head is an old one. Is regulation inhibiting or enhancing, or is innovation inhibited or enhanced through regulation as such? And I think we currently already struggle a bit with explaining and to a certain extent selling the concept of the digital euro to the users. I think merchants, yes, I mean there are advantages, but to the end users. Now, I think a big factor to convince them that this is at least something worth a try to use is, for one, the acceptance, but for on the other hand, also the assurance that there is really something regulated behind. And I think if we can ensure that to the broad audience and the broad usage, that also the people will accept it. In some countries, that is a bit more for discussion than in other countries, privacy, data security, etc. But I think here we cannot completely leave that out of our minds.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think 99.999% of the population have no concept of commercial bank versus central bank money, right? You have money in your bank account, that's commercial bank money. You take it out of the ATM, it's central bank money. Like, you know, so there has to be, the value I think has to come in the use cases. You have to look at it, as Jerome said, you've got to look at it from the consumer point of view. What's going to make them use a digital euro versus other mechanisms that are open to them, right? So it has to be, something has to be better, right? It has to be faster, cheaper, or to my earlier point, you have to be able to do something you couldn't do today, right? And I think that's where the innovation will be. And then if you add in, to your point as well, if you add in, they know that it's ultra secure and backed by the government as well, right? Then maybe you have something there.
Yeah, I would like to come back on the platform for innovation. You were nodding at me because, you know, I love that sentence. Unfortunately, it's not from me, it's from the Bank of England. And the idea of a platform for innovation, I really like the concept, because when we are discussing, is it public or private, I think the platform should come from the central bank. It's their job to create something that will, I mean, it's central bank, but it will be closed. It will be somehow controlled. But then the private sector should be able to innovate on that. And the perfect example for me is the App Store, Apple, the iPhone, and of course not in terms of openness, but in terms of model. They create something where basically they don't know what will be developed. And the best example is Uber. Uber was created on top of the iPhone. You cannot imagine Uber without the iPhone or a smartphone. And it's totally disruptive. Something, again, who would have forked the day the iPhone was launched, but there would be Uber that would totally disrupt a huge industry, the taxi industry. So this platform for innovation is really a model. And when we are talking about what will be the benefit of a retail digital currency, of a retail digital euro, these kind of use cases that will come from innovators, that will come from the private sector on top of this tool that is the digital euro, I think this is where there will be compelling models.
Yeah, no, I think let's see, not to get into the programmability of the digital euro for further innovation, but I know you want to comment on.
Yeah, I would to pick up the topic about infrastructure. Yeah? I mean, what we are talking about is to invest a tremendous amount of money into a new payment infrastructure for Europe. That's what we're talking about. Yeah? And the question is this really the way to go? Yeah? And can't we use what we have? And I think we have great working infrastructures in place in Europe. Yeah? Just looking at the instant payment infrastructure we've built. So there is something to be reused. At the moment, I do not see the real benefit of creating something in parallel and new, while better to maybe reuse what we have, spend less money, and use the money for something different. I mean, let's not forget, banks will have to spend an awful lot of money which is not able to be used for other purposes. Yeah, it's purely used to be compliant and to issue the digital euro, and that's a problem. Yeah, because just to make an example. Yeah, banks in Germany have to finance the business for the ecological transformation with 140 billion euro per year. The next 20 years. This has to come from somewhere. If banks need to spend a lot of money creating new infrastructures, this money is not available for financing the industrial change we need. We have to be aware of this. So it's really something on which we need to think how to spend the money wisely. I know the ECB and money spending is a different animal, but let's really think of it from an economic perspective across Europe. What exactly do we want to achieve? Yeah? Which problem do we want to solve? And we have also heard this morning the problem which is absolutely not addressed is the problem of the industry. Yeah, we have seen, we have heard this morning that corporates are struggling a lot in their digital transformation. They want to have different forms of money to be used. They want to have programmability in their payments, which they want to use for their purposes. And this is really driving the innovation.
No, thanks very much. And we supported various clients on making a cost estimate for what it will cost. And if you sum up the amount, it will be huge for and not just the banks, I think all the payment service providers and everyone included. So therefore, but at least my understanding is that in the rule book discussions, there's still also there's been a reach out to the banks to come up with cost estimations. So maybe that will also influence some of the design principles. So we don't know. So and it's not built yet. The tender's out. So I think there's still time to influence it. And I think the banks and different organizations are still going still hard with ECB on certain principles. So therefore, let's see what it will look like at the end. So. Okay, but I think there's one aspect which I'm a little bit puzzled about all the time is, so as you know, we had EPI in Europe where we tried to come up with a European scheme, and I mean, what's the digital euro is a European scheme. So I mean, and then ECB has said, okay, but we want to have the digital euro wallet or the digital euro app. So I mean, how do you see this? How does the EPI wallet, the digital euro wallet, existing payment front ends, and all this comes together? Because I cannot imagine as an end customer, I don't want to have five apps for paying. So what is your view on that, or do you see any challenges around this?
I start.
You start.
Yeah. I mean, EPI, the European Payment Initiative, is really something which is trying to create something on a European level. Yeah? I can just say I wish all the best that this is coming to be launched quite soon. This is creating a lot of traction also in terms of adoption. I can just wish the best for it. And therefore, the EPI is addressing exactly the same use cases as the ECB is addressing. The ECB is always saying we need something on a European basis, harmonized and whatsoever. It is there, yeah, and or will be there quite soon. For sure, it might be a nucleus, not all countries are involved, and therefore there's still a lot of work to do, but there is something, yeah, and there's a core which can be used, which can be extended, and therefore the arguments that banks failed to deliver something is just totally wrong.
Anyone else?
So maybe just picking up from one of your last words, indeed, there is something there that can, but also could have been already extended. And I think now coming from an institution which has been clearly also investing under all perspectives into both EPI and also the digital euro, I can say that we truly embrace the concept which both follow, the one of creating a European ecosystem, a European, enriching the European payment landscape, both on their journey and how they were intended. But there you see then the differences. I mean, EPI, the advantages were clear, and it was mapped out even to a clearer extent before the digital euro. And yet, because it was a private initiative, very many banks and regions and markets successively backed a little bit away, right? So we're getting, once again, back to the question, is regulatory always harming? Is it bad, or is it actually enhancing? Because now there is at least, I would say, a due date, etc. So I think there is the positives and the negative aspects. But I think the thought process behind both from a European perspective is just the right one, and that is what we also embrace as a European company. On the other hand, I can also understand the question, getting back to your original question, so me as an end user, how do I deal with that? I mean, I don't want to have 50 apps. I think the average person might have 50 apps on their iPhone, but not necessarily all with the same scope or with different providers, etc. So I think indeed here the question will be, how do I make it, once again, understandable to the end user? How do I provide a front end that makes sense? And I think also here, I mean, the discussions can be filling entire evenings. If how many apps there will be, maybe there will be one, maybe it will be all within then the bank app, etc. So I think at the end of the day, it has to be intuitive for the end user. And with all due respect, currently we're discussing a lot about infrastructure implementation and regulatory framework, which is needful. But we also have to really take into consideration how do I make it operable, right? For merchants, but also then for the end users. And I think this is a long discussion which is still ahead of us.
Perfect. Jerome,
you say 50 apps. Personally, I love it, 50 apps. It means competition. I won't be using 50 apps, but it means competition. And who wins in competition is the end user. So the idea of having a dynamic ecosystem with people competing, and maybe on some sectors, this app is better for this kind of people, and this other app, and you choose. Think about today with, I don't know, stock trading, banking, home banking, these kind of applications. See the difference between the different apps. Which one do you choose? The best one, of course. And competition is good in that sense for the investment of the bank. So, of course, due to the regulation, due to the legal standard status, banks will be mandated if the legislation is passed. Banks will be mandated to implement the digital euro. But some will go for the bare minimum, and some will say, okay, let's differentiate banks, fintechs, other companies. Not sure who will be, what would be the exact scope of the company able to issue, not to issue, but offer to distribute digital euro. Personally, I think it's good to have competition. There will be 50 apps, great, and we, as a user, I will choose the best.
It's great. It's great to see that innovation is fostered by regulation, and so I see digital euro as a good example for this. So that's great to see. So, but I think competition also means a threat for others who are already providing infrastructure and apps. So therefore, it's interesting. We talked a lot about this huge cost. So I mean, but let's discuss a little bit on the commercial side. So I mean, Manfred said banks are providing these services, or other providing these services, so they also make money with it. So therefore, I mean, what is your view on what could be a commercial model for CBDC? Is there one? As we heard, it must be offered for free. And also in the rulebook discussion and other discussions in the design principles, there are certain incentivation. So what is your view from bank perspective or other perspective on what could be a commercial model for retail CBDC, or is there one?
I'll have a crack at it. I think just to preface that, I think there's a fundamental question really, which is, what's the role of the central bank? And if it's to say the same as it is, right, in this commercial bank, central bank money is, reserves and cash, right? So a lot of central banks are looking at this as, it's just replacing and improving that, right? As I said before, I don't think that's really the right answer. I think the longer people study and the more complicated they make it, the more expensive it's going to be. So I would encourage speed over total precision, right? And I think I still believe this blend of public-private is the answer, right? I think the central bank should do what they need to do at a reasonable cost and not burden everyone else with that cost. And then, the innovation and the competition will come from the private sector, right? So some will offer a bare minimum, say, okay, well, you can put your CBDC in my name the bank wallet, right? Or they'll say, okay, I'm going to offer all these other services in competition with my other banks, right? So I don't know where the commercial answer will be, but I think given that it's pretty much inevitable that there will be some form of public digital money, It's just get over that, right? Just assume that's going to happen, make the central banks do it in a reasonably cost-effective way, and then just have at it in the open market and see what happens. I think there'll be winners and losers, right? And that's what makes people nervous, because they think, oh, maybe I'll be a loser, right? Well, okay, why don't you just think like a winner, and then maybe you'll be successful.
Any more comments? No, okay. So.
No, I think fully agree to you, James, what you said. I think it also comes with the standards. Yeah. So if you create standards on which everyone can create solutions, and then this will create automatically the competition you need, and then I think this topic about compensation is off the table. Yeah. I think really what we need especially in Europe, and I mean we have many examples where Europe did a very good job in creating standards. Why don't we have this in payments? I don't know, and I do not understand this. Why not creating standards and see that the markets finds solutions based on those standards? And I'm very sure this will happen.
I think it's good that you're so optimistic there will be a recovery of your cost over time. so therefore, I think that's then a positive angle to the discussion of getting the funding. Yeah. So now I think just looking at the clock, let's come to our last round, and I think it's an open question to you. So what needs to happen to make the retail CBDC a success? I think. So everyone, James, do you want to start?
Sure. Let's spice it up a bit here, shall we? I think there's really sort of three factors that need to all be sort of somewhat in balance, right? So obviously you've got to have the legal and regulatory environment. You've got to have the technology. You have to pick a technology. Don't study it forever, right? Pick a technology. Again, I would suggest all these things need to be done in collaboration with public and private sector. But I think the key here is really, where the rubber hits the road is on the use cases. And as I said before, I personally really believe that just the basic use cases, that's just the start of the journey, right? And thinking about the user, so whether the user is an individual consumer or a business, there has to be value, right? Why am I going to change to do something if it's not better in some way, right? And I think you can always make incremental improvements. You can improve cost, which you can either choose to keep and improve margin as a business, or you can pass on to the consumer. But these new creative ideas, that's what we're spending a lot of time on. The projects that we're doing, like in Montenegro and Palau and Georgia, all of them have use cases that are pretty interesting. So, bond tokenization or payroll distribution, or, some of them are cash alternatives. Those are the things that will, I think, make a CBDC, retail CBDC, a success or not. And if you can't come up with those sort of applications, why would anyone use it, right? So I think as an industry of positive thinking, people, we need to collaborate and come up with these use cases.
Well, I completely agree to what you said in terms of the use cases and thinking of the end user. I think that the most important point is we're all in it for the long haul. Yeah, as I said before, this is nothing which has a complete close and end date. Hence, we should embrace it as opportunity. And I know it's very difficult because currently there are costs associated. There's expertise which needs to be dedicated, resources, etc. So I completely understand that. But nonetheless, the iPhone example was a fantastic one, right? So we are actually here now building another something like a smartphone. And this is always what we have to keep in mind. And hence, we also enrich the financial, the payment, the banking landscape as of today. Important is, however, to move as fast as possible. Because, of course, if we discuss something until the very bitter end, then the train has left the station, right? And the third part being that, indeed, we also have to think about ourselves as end users. So if I go to the Rewe cash desk, why would I pay with the digital euro? Would I save 3, 5, 10, 30,000 euros on my digital euro account? What would I do as an end user? And I think we all have the responsibility to think in that way. And, well, lastly saying, I mean, it's a lot of effort, but no great invention and idea ever started with a simple salad, right? But with a complex menu and a bit of great wine. So I think we just have to embrace also the complexity behind it.
Yeah, thank you. Only a few words to add. One topic is, I think, and coming back also to the users, we need to create something which is on top of the existing, which creates more value than the existing payment rails. And this is super difficult. And this only will work in the public-private partnership, opening up for real innovation on top of the existing. And if we want to make the digital euro a success, then I think this is the best way to go forward.
My last comment would be on the fact that we talked about the different overpayment method, existing payment methods. Cash is different. Cash is very specific. Cash cannot fail. If my Visa doesn't work, not often, but okay, I fall back to cash. I always have a little note somewhere just in case. If cash fails, you're in trouble. So cash cannot fail. Cash must work really anytime, anywhere. Cash is available to everyone. Again, making the public at the center, putting the public at the center of the equation. There is no exclusion. Cash should be available to really everyone. And when we talk to central banks, many central banks come to us saying we have a very specific segment of the population in our country. It's very specific. And they need to be served. We need to address them, and they have a specific need. Maybe if I'm a private company, I can say, okay, 1% of the population, I won't serve them, I will focus on the other ones. With cash, you cannot do that. So never forget when we talk about CBDC, when we talk about digital euro, of this universality, very different from other payment methods.
No, great. Thanks very much for all the discussion. I think we can continue, and hopefully next year we will be wiser on the design principles. So thanks very much to everyone.